I'm sorry for your loss, or I'm so sorry for your loss. You've heard it before. You've probably said it. I have also said it. And I want to be clear. I'm sorry for your loss is not in and of itself a bad thing to say when someone is grieving, and it's not enough. And this episode is not about shaming anybody. This podcast is about telling the truth that so many grievers wish someone would say out loud, that after a loss, grieving people need more than a single sentence of politeness pointed in their direction. Hi there, grief growers, and welcome back to Grief Grower. I am so delighted to be here with you today. As always, if you have been growing alongside me in my work for a while, welcome back. And if you are new to me and my work, hello. My name is Shelby Forsythia. I am a grief coach, 2-time, soon to be 3-time author. We'll talk about that in a second. And the founder of Life After Loss Academy. And I have had the honor of helping thousands of grieving people stop feeling lost, stuck, heartbroken, and overwhelmed, and start building lives that they genuinely love from the lives that loss has forced them to live. And when I say loss, I do not only mean death-related losses. I also mean losses like divorce and breakup, major diagnosis, whether that's health or mental health, and any other loss that changes your life. Here on Grief Grower, we believe that grief is not something to get over. It is something that we grow with and alongside. And that when we as people, as a society, stop treating grief less like a problem to be solved or something that's wrong with you, and more like an invitation to live more deeply, we create meaningful lives that are rich with the memories that we carry from loved ones who have died or from relationships we've been in, the struggles that we face, the things we've seen and been through, and the precious awareness of what it is to be right here and right now. And today on the show, I am so thrilled to be continuing our Supporting Someone series. This started in August of 2025. This is a very slow burn lead up to the release of my third book, which is called Of Course I'm Here Right Now. And this is a book that literally is a pocket guidebook. It is so short and impactful. That is 3 actually helpful phrases to say to someone grieving. This is not about actions that you take to support someone grieving. This is not about ways you can improve HR policy at work to support someone grieving. This is literally the guidebook for someone I love is in a state of distress, suffering, or pain, and I do not know what to say. This book are the words to say. And today on the show, I want to talk about the common phrase, I'm sorry for your loss. This is something that some grievers appreciate, some grievers do not, for many, many reasons. And I think one of the things that has echoed the most strongly for me across the grief groups that I lead, things I see from grievers on social media, across the internet, and things I talk about with the grieving people in my real life is that, like, sorry for your loss is fine, but it isn't enough. And so I want to talk about why I'm sorry for your loss isn't enough, and what you might like to say or might be more appropriate to say to a grieving person in your life instead. Because for those of us who have experienced a devastating loss, whether, again, that is death, divorce, diagnosis, or some other life-altering transition, the silence that we often feel from friends and family that follows the loss can be overwhelming. But something that's equally disorienting is what does get said, the phrases that do get said. And one of them, a huge one, is this phrase, I'm sorry for your loss, or I'm so sorry for your loss. You've heard it before. You've probably said it. I have also said it. And I want to be clear at the very, very top of the show here. I'm sorry for your loss is not in and of itself a bad thing to say when someone is grieving or their life has been upended in some major way. And it is also in the minds and perspectives of so many grievers, and we're going to get into why, it's not enough when someone in your midst is grieving. And this episode is not about shaming anybody for trying to be kind or courteous or kind of follow the societal script or rules when someone is mourning in our midst. This podcast is about telling the truth that so many grievers wish someone would say out loud. So hello, microphone for grieving people right here. That after a loss, grieving people need more than a single sentence of politeness pointed in their direction. Grieving people need and want ongoing connection. They need words that go beyond those that are printed in a Hallmark sympathy card, and sometimes the phrases that we've been taught to say by society, the media, like, I'm sorry for your loss. they become so overused or so automatic, they're just like a default reaction, that they stop landing the way that we, as the people who are trying to offer support and make our friends and family feel better, think that they will. And so for the whole episode today, I want to talk about why. Why does the phrase, "I'm sorry for your loss," feel like not enough to grieving people, and offer you some alternatives to what to say instead. So many of us default to, "I'm sorry for your loss," because of, societal norms, societal scripts, societal expectations. We learn to perform or demonstrate sympathy after a loss, oftentimes, the same way that we learn to write a thank you note or complete a job interview, through scripts. There's kind of a way this normally goes, and if A, then B. If someone experiences a loss, we say, "I'm sorry for your loss," and that is a way that we show that we care. And when someone that we care about is grieving, that is what we do. And it shows up in condolence cards, in workplace emails. I referenced HR at the top of the show, text messages between people, between friends, the group chat, in funeral services, and in that handshaking line that a lot of people stand in after they've lost somebody to death, and in moments where words fail and we feel a pressure to say something, anything. "I'm sorry for your loss" is kind of like the thing that fills in that space. And "I'm sorry for your loss" is simple, it's short, it's polite. And for a lot of people, it feels like a very, very safe phrase to say because it's non-religious. And in a lot of ways, expressing, "I am so sorry for your loss" feels true. And I'll kind of get at why, because a lot of people, comforters, supporters of grievers, helping professionals, they say "I'm sorry for your loss" should be fine enough because the etymological origins of the word sorry literally mean distressed or full of suffering. So it makes sense then that in using this phrase or directing it at someone who is grieving, you are trying to relay your own heartbreak to the grieving person, a friend, family, coworker, or a stranger who is suffering, because taken very literally, "I'm so sorry for your loss" equals, "I'm full of sorrow for your loss, my heart breaks with yours." And so we'll get to this in a second, but the sense that a lot of comforters have is this is a helpful phrase. It's a helpful thing to say. This statement, "I'm sorry for your loss, my heart breaks with yours," is meaningful and with a certain tone can be touching. But I think that one of the problems with this phrase is that it has become so common and so commercialized and capitalized and corporatized that when it's said all by itself with no follow-up or with no additional padding or context around it, it fails in and of itself to provide real comfort or compassion. It cannot really stand on its own. And the saddest part about this is "I'm sorry for your loss" is a lot of times all that any comforter or supporter, all that we were ever taught or all that we know to say. And I really want to be gentle and tender and compassionate here because I am a griever. I am also a supporter of grievers. And I want to recognize that everyone who says "I'm sorry for your loss" usually has very good intentions. This is where we get to talking about intentions of comforting someone who's grieving. The goal is to make someone feel seen or heard or to feel better or to recognize that they are not alone in this. And the thing I want to kind of get into your ear holes, especially if you are supporting someone grieving in this season, is that the issue is not the intention behind the phrase "I'm sorry for your loss." It is 100% how it is landing for your griever. This is a concept called intention versus impact. And if you'd like more on this, there's a wonderful short video on social media. I found a version on YouTube. You can also find it on TikTok and Instagram from Therapy Jeff called Intention versus Impact. If you have ever been on the receiving end of dozens or even hundreds of condolences that all revolve around the phrase "I'm sorry for your loss," you will understand this, because after a while, this one singular phrase, "I'm sorry for your loss, my condolences, I'm so, so sorry for your loss, I'm so sorry that they died," or what have you, it starts to feel like it's just the sea that you're swimming in. It feels like a phrase that people say when they want to just check the box of, "Yep, I said something, I reached out," and then return to their normal lives. So for many grieving people, "I'm sorry for your loss" feels like this bland, obligatory statement. For other grievers, it feels like the end of a conversation. "I'm sorry for your loss, period." A period on the end of a sentence when a much deeper exchange about the loss or about how they're feeling or about how they're doing could have happened. And I'll give you an example from my own life to see if this resonates with you. When my best friend died from COVID in 2022, I was inundated with a barrage of sympathy messages, both online and in person, and receiving, "I'm so sorry for your loss," or "I'm sorry for your loss," over and over and over and over again. It genuinely felt, I was mad. It felt like the very least that people could do. Because my best friend Tammy was a vibrant activist and a close neighbor. She lived like 4 blocks away from me and a decade-long friend. We had a very rich history together. She wasn't just my loss. "I'm sorry for your loss." She was a crucial part of my world that was no longer here on earth. And "sorry for your loss" did not feel like nearly enough of a response to her death. I knew logically in my brain that people had good intentions. I've been a grief educator since 2016. I wanted the people in my life to recognize in words the enormity of what and who I had lost and validate how life-changing this season, especially because her death was unexpected, was for me. And another post that I saw on the subreddit grief support read, "People who text me and say, quote, 'I'm sorry for your loss,' are pissing me off. My grandpa died August 4th, 2024. We buried him and I fell gravely ill after his funeral. I don't even know how to process anything. We lost him and my mind thinks he's still here. I spent the last year getting closure, which was great. Now I'm left with so much anger. I want to scream at every person texting me that they are sorry for my loss. They are not. I left them all in unread since the funeral. They have not reached back out. I am just so mad at everyone pretending to care." And like this person who posted on Reddit, many grieving people expressed receiving loads and loads of condolence messages immediately after a loss with no meaningful follow-up afterwards. This leaves them feeling abandoned at a critical time with "sorry for your loss" acting like the language nail in the coffin of the relationship. Those are going to be your final words to each other. And then you just never reach out with regard to the relationship or ask about their grief ever again. Like what is that? What is that? And that is so often what happens after an outreach of "sorry for your loss" occurs. Other grieving people will say things like, "After my divorce, it felt like everyone was reading from the same script. I wanted someone to look at me and say something that felt real, something besides 'I'm sorry for your loss.'" Still, other grieving people recognize phrases like "I'm sorry for your loss" are polite, but still fail to acknowledge or ask how they, the grieving person, are doing. "Sorry for your loss." No check-in on how they are, how their heart's doing, how are the kids, how's the family, how are you holding up? No status report or no further questioning of how are you getting through this? And then sometimes, especially for younger grievers, the phrase "sorry for your loss" is confusing because it can imply fault or apology. Another post I saw on Grief Support Reddit simply said, "What do you have to be sorry about? Did you kill the person who died?" I feel like people just say "sorry for your loss" because they're sorry that they only have a generic response to say to the person who is struggling during a hard time. And to me, that's it's very remarkably funny. Grievers are very funny people. But yes, especially for grievers who are young or potentially neurodivergent and take things very literally, to say, "I'm so sorry for your loss," it's like it wasn't your fault. It can come off as an apology or an admission of blame, but unless you are responsible for the death of a person who died and the person who is grieving a death, for a lot of people that doesn't compute. And what all of this adds up to is saying "I'm sorry for your loss" often avoids the very things that grievers long for the most. Things like connection, things like shared memory, things like witnessing or presence or emotional validation and continued relationship. And it doesn't mean, once again, this phrase is not bad. It is not inherently malicious, but it does mean that we can do better as people who are supporting grieving people in our midst. So now's the part of the episode where we get to what to say instead of "I'm sorry for your loss." In my new book, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, I share 3 powerful phrases that go deeper than "I'm sorry for your loss." These are phrases that open doors instead of closing them, because grief is not something that can be wrapped up in a single sentence. It is something that needs to be met again and again with curiosity, care, and presence. And these are just a few tips from Of Course I'm Here Right Now, kind of sprinkled in with other things that I asked my community and the grievers in my midst to provide for me as what would you rather people say, as opposed to "I'm sorry for your loss." And the number one answer, ding, 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 is say their loved one's name or mention their specific loss, because there is something really special about hearing your person's name after they die. It is a reminder that they existed, that they mattered, that people still remember them. And so instead of saying "sorry for your loss," you might try, "I've been thinking so much about Teresa lately. I still remember the story you told me about her trying to grow carrots and feeding a family of bunnies instead." David made such an impact on me. I'm holding his memory and his lessons about golf close. Or if you didn't know the person who died, I didn't know your aunt, but it sounds like she was really significant in your life, and I know that you miss her. And if the loss that you're talking about is non-death related, you can still mention their specific type of loss and validate that this is what they're going through. So to say, I'm sorry that divorce is your reality right now, it doesn't seem fair. Or, as I said to a friend very recently, living in a human body is hard. I can see how much this new diagnosis is changing your life. Or, I can see how hard you're trying to settle into your new day-to-day routine. Losing a job is no joke. And just really honoring and validating the circumstances that they are in. And you don't have to say, again, the perfect thing. We're not aiming for perfection here. We're aiming for something that's personal. And here's a pro tip from me to you as a grief coach and someone who has supported grievers for many years. If you're thinking it internally, wow, that must be really hard. She's got 3 kids at home. She lives by herself, or he just lost a job last year, or his dad was the closest thing to a friend that he had. You can say things like that without the judgment. You can say, I know you've got 3 kids at home. I imagine this is really hard for you. Or, I know your dad was the closest thing you had to a best friend. I can sense how much this hurts, or I can see how life-changing this is for you. If that is information you know and you're already thinking it in your head, it's okay to say out loud. It's not something that is judgy or too invasive. It is you recognizing either the depth of their relationship or the reality of their circumstances. And that is a way of connecting much more deeply than simply, I'm sorry for your loss. There's a wonderful author and professor and podcaster named Kate Bowler. She wrote a book called Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved. And then she wrote a book recently called No Cure for Being Human, both of which I have read. And she recently posted on Threads, like this week. She said, Everything Happens for a Reason is out. Wow, that's a lot, is in. So instead of telling people who are going through hard things, everything happens for a reason, or I'm so sorry for your loss, try saying, wow, that's a lot, because that is a lot more validating and comforting to people, being acknowledged and witnessed in that way, than, sorry for your loss. The number 2 thing you can do instead of saying sorry for your loss is speaking to the reality of their pain, and we touched on this a bit in number 1. And I want to really drive home here that you do not have to understand someone's grief to acknowledge that it is painful. So instead of some sort of generic condolence, I'm sorry for your loss, you can say something like, this must be so heavy for you right now. Or, I can imagine this has changed everything about how you move through the world. Or, I'm struggling to find the words for this, I bet you are too, but I can see how much you're carrying. I have not forgotten your person. I have not forgotten the fact that you are grieving. And these kinds of statements signal, kind of like a little flag in the air, that you are not just trying to get through the conversation with them so you can get back to normal. You are trying to be in it with them. You are taking 2 seconds out of your day to recognize they're going through something really hard, while they also have to exist and be human just like the rest of us. They go beyond just acknowledging the loss and do the work of acknowledging your griever, the person who is experiencing and living in the aftermath of the loss. And then number 3, alternatives to I'm sorry for your loss, have a statement that makes it clear that you're going to keep checking in beyond this present moment. Because, as we've said on this show before, grief doesn't end after the funeral or after the divorce is finalized or after the initial moment when someone tells you that they're going through something hard. And for many grieving people, the loneliest part of life after loss comes in the weeks and the months and the years after the casseroles stop coming and people stop checking in. And this one single phrase, I'm here for you now and into the future, can be so incredibly comforting for grieving people. Or you could say variations of this. For instance, I'll keep checking in with you each Thursday, but you don't need to respond. Like send a text every Thursday, or send an email each Thursday, or saw this article and thought of you every Thursday. No need to respond. I'd still like to get coffee once a month if that works for you. We can do the location by your house if that's easier. Just offer and keep offering. Or let's book a weekend around your mom's death anniversary if that feels good. Let them say, yeah, that feels good. No, it doesn't. Let's do a different weekend. Just placing offers at their feet. Or consistently checking in even if they don't respond, especially at first, because a lot of people are tied up in the sad administration, paperwork of life after loss. And if you want to, this is kind of the asterisk at the end of these 3 alternatives, if you want to, or if you must say, I'm sorry, if this is part of your, again, I'm referencing HR a lot in this podcast, but if I'm sorry for your loss is part of your script, let it be a doorway to something else, not a period on the end of a sentence. So you can say, I'm so sorry, can I bring you dinner tomorrow? Or if you're speaking on behalf of a company, you can say something like, we're so sorry for your loss, here's a week's worth of dinner on behalf of the company, and send them a gift card that they can use at their own time, at their own pace. You can say, I'm sorry for your loss, I'd love to hear your favorite story about your uncle, or I can tell you one of mine. Or you can say, I'm so sorry that this happened, how is your heart today? And transfer immediately from acknowledging the loss to checking in on the person who's grieving. Ultimately, the goal of these phrases is to let your words be an invitation to keep talking, to keep sharing, to continue to stay connected. It is not a closing of the door in a single sentence. It is a continuation of a relationship that already exists. And the thing I want to leave you with before we sign off today is your words matter so much after loss. That is the whole reason that I wrote this book, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, because words can take us out at the knees, or they can make us feel like we are not the only ones in the world who are suffering in the way that we are, or even if we are, that we are not alone in seeing and witnessing our suffering. And when someone that we love is grieving, their entire world is destabilized. The foundation has fallen out from underneath their feet, and a lot of times, very understandably, they are clinging to whatever human connection they have or that they can find. And the words that you offer, however small, however short, however frequent, can either reinforce this sense of I'm alone in the world or I'm alone in my grief, or keep the door open to your presence and care. Supporting somebody who's grieving is not about scripts or formulas, X plus B equals Y, or whatever the case may be. It is about your relationship to the person who is grieving, and words are one of the best, free, might I add, ways to maintain and strengthen a relationship where one or more participants in the relationship is going through grief. You do not have to get it exactly right. You can even say, I know I'm not going to get this right, but, and then insert phrase here. But you do have to show up with some flavor of sincerity and interest and care and compassion. So when you say something like, I'm sorry for your loss, it's not the worst thing in the world. But what grieving people truly long for, what they've told me, what they've posted on the internet, what they're telling other grievers in their lives, what they're sharing in grief support circles, is that they long for something deeper than that. They want to be talked to like real people, and they want to be reminded that their pain is seen, or that their person is remembered, or that their grief is welcome, their emotions are welcome within the context of your pre-existing relationship. So as a society, I propose we stop treating I'm sorry for your loss like it's the end of a conversation and start treating it like it's the beginning. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry that happened. What's next? Where are we going from here? I'm going to keep showing up for you this way, or tell me a story about this, or I'll tell a story about this, or I can validate how hard this is for you. All of those things are next steps that come as the after to I'm so sorry for your loss. And if you want more tips and scripts to support somebody who is grieving, this podcast, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is part of a series called Supporting Someone Who is Grieving in Your Life, without overthinking it, without freezing up, without defaulting to cliche sympathy card hallmark phrases. And if this episode was helpful to you, I really encourage you to pre-order my book. Of course, I'm here right now. It comes out in March of next year. And in this book, you will get real-world compassionate guidance in a pocket guide style. It is so short for a book on what to say when someone you care about is grieving. And it is a guide from a grief coach with the words of grievers embedded in its pages that has easy scripts and tips and tools for comforting a grieving person, so that you stop feeling afraid of saying the wrong thing and instead enter every single conversation in your life with language that relays your presence and support and care, whether you are a longtime deep friend of a griever or a recent acquaintance or a person in a helping profession. And I would so appreciate you pre-ordering this book. It helps me as an author. And of course, after you read it, it will help so many grieving people in your midst. And I will say, as a little PS on top of this, if you are a grieving person and you are not supported by people in your life right now, this book is also written in such a way that you can be your own comforter. The scripts, the tools, the exercises, everything included in here can also be framed in such a way that you are comforting yourself as you navigate life after any sort of devastating loss, death, divorce, diagnosis, and so much more. And you can find a link to pre-order Of Course I'm Here Right Now in the show notes. That's all for this episode of Grief Grower. Thank you so very much for joining me today. If you're looking for grief support beyond this show, you can find free workshops, blog articles, and my signature What's Your Grief Support Style quiz at shelbyforsythia.com/links. And if you'd like to get support from me for your unique loss experience, you can join us at any time in Life After Loss Academy, my online course and community. As a student, I'll walk you through my 5-step grief framework for rebuilding after loss, and you can get live coaching from me every single week to answer your questions. Replays are always available if you can't attend live. It is just $33 a month to join, or $22 a month if you're a marginalized or financially stressed griever. No questions asked, and you can cancel at any time. If this podcast felt validating, comforting, educational, or otherwise helpful to you, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And be sure to share this show with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. Grief Grower is hosted by me, Shelby Forsythia, and the theme music is composed by Addie Goldstein. Until next time, Grief Growers, I see you. I am so incredibly proud of the work that you're doing in the world, and I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.